That's cool. I see some people here. I see Rosalind. Rosalind, are you? Have you met Katie before?
No, I haven't. Nice to meet you, Katie.
Nice to meet you, Rosalind.
Yeah, Rosalind's been out here racing triathlons from the LA area forever and ever and ever, and big supporter of Challenge Athletes Foundation. She's been part of LA Tri Club.
Yes, I know.
So awesome.
Yeah, I'm a USAT ambassador this year also.
There
Wow.
you go.
There you go.
I like it.
And love
So-
CAF.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Roz.
No, I was just saying, and I love CAF.
Well, you should. So Katie, you're heading off to a training camp. How long is the camp, and when are you racing again?
Yeah, so I'm heading off Sunday, next Sunday. We're heading to Spain. Tommy left a couple days ago. He's working the winter multi-sport in Aurora. And so I'll meet him in Girona, where we'll have kind of a mini camp. I train with Joel Filial and his squad, my teammates, but because of COVID right now, there's a few teammates who are in Australia who won't be able to join us. So it's actually only going to be like me, Vincent Lewis, Martin Van Riel, Jelle Jeans from Belgium, and then we'll have Carol Routier from Spain, and then Emily Morier from France. So a little bit of a mini squad. Joel will join us mid-April, so that we'll get to actually train with him until we go to Yokohama, which should be our first event. And they just announced that they're opening Olympic points. So that was really a great thing to hear for us, because we were a little bit waiting to figure out if we were actually going to be starting our Olympic points for Yokohama, and if they didn't, what our season would look like. So as far as right now, we're going to do Yokohama and then Leeds, and then fingers crossed, Tokyo.
Yeah. So Yokohama will be the final qualifier then?
Yeah, Yokohama acts as a qualifying event if any female American finishes on the top, like first podium, or the first woman on the podium, they'll automatically qualify for Tokyo. And then the other spot will be discretion. So there is a discretionary spot up for grabs. So I've set myself up well for the discretionary selection, but also I like to just leave all chance out of it, and I'll just go for that podium spot.
If you guys have questions, you put them into the chat box, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Katie, you had that Olympic experience in 2016. What did you take away from that?
Well, I would say the 2016 experience was probably the most impactful race that I've had, and it changed a lot for my direction. I was really disappointed with my race in 2016 in Rio. I had the race before, I had won my first WTS race in Hamburg, so I was confident going into it, but also still had a little bit of anxiety with the cycling course, and the fact that everyone had kind of talked about the uphill going into the Rio, like test event and the race in Rio, but no one really was discussing the downhill. And that part scared me to death, because it was just like a steep downhill. It usually was a little wet. And so I think from that race, like I really lost sight of my strengths going into Rio, where I was more focused on being fearful of this downhill. And like, it was really just kind of, sticking in my brain, to the point where I like kind of lost okay, well, maybe this downhill isn't my strength, but I have a lot of other strengths that can compensate for that. And then, so after I finished, I think, well, it's bad that I don't even know what I finished there, but 18th, I think.
18th,
yeah. I was just like really concrete on like, okay, how am I going to get better? How am I going to get better physically? How am I going to get better mentally? Who is the team that's going to be surrounding me? Like, I was super fortunate to be coached by Joel then, and to be continued to be coached by him and have amazing teammates. But it was also starting to work with a nutritionist again, working with a sports psychologist like way more regularly. I worked more with a sports psychologist kind of reactively before Rio, where I would be like, well, I'm freaking out. I need to talk to someone. And then it became like, okay, I'm going to talk to my sports psych. I mean, I actually just had a call with my sports psych like a couple days ago. And I probably talk to her at least once a month. When it comes to racing season, I'll talk to her a little bit more, where like going into different races. But I found that by being a lot more proactive about it and having her regularly on my schedule, most of the time I don't actually feel like I need to talk to her. Like I'm not just like waiting to talk to Karen, although sometimes I do. But I'm more like, okay, like when we talk to each other, like I'm sorting out things like before they become real anxieties or real fears. It's like being able to just be a little bit preemptive about, okay, what do I think might be challenging for me? And so like last time we spoke, it was about Yokohama and getting ready for the next qualifier, but also the first race of the season and the first race of the like 2021 COVID type of racing. So just having her has really changed like since Rio. I guess I kind of hit a lot of things off your question. So
No, I like it. Sometimes you have those races that just, they change you. They change your whole focus.
It just made it really clear that I wanted to change my, like how I was as an athlete and how I started to take more ownership, I think, with like training and racing, where I'm still following like Joel's schedule plan. He's still my coach, but I talk to him more about like, okay, like I would like to have a day where I go to the parking lot and do skills. And the best day for me to do this is when you're doing sprints as well, because if I'm doing my sprints on the same day that I'm doing my skills in the parking lot, then like it's way more beneficial to practice it at like a harder effort than go to skills on my recovery ride and just be kind of like riding through. Now I'm getting a little more bang for my buck by adding in those sprints, so it's at speed.
So we have a question from Rick. You talked about being tired when your BP permitted would just not go up. Any other clues to identify you're tired and need to back off?
Yeah, my emotions and like just like how I'm able to see like my engagement and my mental energy, I would say, is one of the signs of like my fatigue. Also, I've been trying to figure out kind of, it's hard to explain, but there's sometimes where like you go into a workout, you're really tired, but it's like a productive tired. Like you're still able to get out the same outcome or like hit the power that you want to. You just don't feel good doing it. But then there's other days where it's like you go and you're like, I had a couple weeks ago, I was going to do this hill workout on the bike and I got out the door and I was like, ooh, like it felt like an effort just to ride easy. And I was like, all right, well, like Katie, give yourself a chance, make it to the hill. So I rode like the 90 minutes to get to the hill. I was supposed to have 10 by 3 minutes. I did 1 3-minute effort and I was like, like, okay, like it wasn't like completely off, but it was just not like the right sensations for doing it on fatigue. So I did a third of the next one and then I just turned around and rode home because I knew it was a fatigue that I was going to just like end up in a hole if I forced out this workout. It wasn't a fatigue that was like a productive fatigue. And ended up that I got my period the next week and I was like, okay, like this makes sense to me. And it was nice to have like a little bit of reasoning and for like why I was so tired. And when I talked to Joel about it, he's like, yeah, I kind of guessed that was what it was. And we had changed training just a little bit, but like really like, I guess so like a clue is like being really dialed into your body and how like keeping track of like the ebbs and flows of how you are in training and racing so that you can figure out like, this is normal, this is not normal.
So Katie, here's another question for you. That's a good one. When you're hammering so hard on the bike in an Olympic distance race, when and how are you able to eat and drink without losing momentum? This is from More M4.
Yeah, so a few different ways. One of the reasons that I partnered with UCAN going into this year is so that I can do more of my nutrition prior to the race. And so I don't have to be so stressed out about getting in nutrition actually during like the fast-paced triathlon, because that's something that I've struggled with in the past. I try to make it as easy as possible for myself. And I've also tried to be really intentional about when I take in my fuel. So like before I would just be like, oh, I'm going to drink like 2 bottles, or I'm going to have 2 gels. And now I think more like, okay, I identify on the race, like where is a good place to eat and drink? And I make sure that I do it each time. So it's like, this is a straightaway. There are no corners. It's a good place to drink my bottle right now. And I'll visualize in my visualizations prior to the race, myself doing it. So that when it comes to the race, it seems more natural and I'm able to actually get in the fuel that I need to do. I would say another part of that is doing it in training so that I feel a lot more comfortable eating and drinking during hard efforts, and that I practice it. So then when it comes to the race, it feels more natural.
So this is from Kay Grant. What do skills workouts look like for you?
They look different, different times of the year, and also depending on like how many other people we're with. So I'll kind of explain a few of them. Some of them would be just us going to a vacant parking lot and the cones down, or our coach will put a car in like the middle of the parking lot, or we'll use the medians, we'll use the like curbs, we'll use all the different things that are in the parking lot as a structure to, or even the lines, just to create almost like a course for us. A lot of the times I'll be just following. So when we're here in Cary, North Carolina, we've been going to an arena, the PNC arena, and we've been doing skills in their parking lot, and I'll follow Tommy so that like he's setting the lines, and the first time we do it, we'll go through and he's showing me the course. So like I know the turns, it's not just like following blindly, and then we'll do them a little bit faster, a little bit faster, a little bit faster. And like I'm lucky because Tommy is a lot more skilled than I am on the bike. And so basically I'll mimic him. And if he shifts, I shift. If like he's out of the saddle, I'm getting out of the saddle. And like learning off of him helps me to kind of find the rhythm, and then we'll trade off. So then I'm leading and then we'll go back and forth so that I can learn from someone who's better than me. When we're with our whole group, then it can be like a skills, just the parking lot session where it's like using, there's one in France that we use that has like a downhill. So you can pick up speed, but not really have to exert too much energy. And then you will do like different cornering around like cones, or following the parking lot structure a bit. Also, we'll do like crit sessions. So we'll have full workouts within the parking lot, and we'll do like run off the bike. So it might be like a 3 to 5 minute bike effort, and then we'll have our transition set up and just run off the bike for like 1 to 2 minutes or so. And oftentimes like Joel or our assistant coach will be there. We do the full thing. We have our rubber bands on our shoes, like bring our racing flats. And so we just practice those like race specific skills along with the bike skills. And those are ones where I get a lot of confidence out of, because it's specific to our races. And if we have a race that has certain corners, then we'll make the route within the parking lot specific to what type of corners we're going to have in our race.
Okay, this one's from Rosalind. Katie, you mentioned working with nutritionists. Can you talk a bit about your daily meals and how you will be changing your nutrition as you ramp up for racing?
Yeah, daily meals. So with my nutritionist, it also kind of depends on what time of the year we're in. So like going from the off season, I usually rely on Sean a lot more. I'll send him photos of like everything I eat, mainly as someone to hold me accountable. We don't count calories or anything like that, but he can get an idea based off my pictures, because I find that personally to be a lot less, it takes a lot less energy for me to just take a snapshot of like picture of my food and send it to him, and him be like, thumbs up or whatever, or be like, why don't you eat another English muffin, or did you really need that?
That Pop-Tart looked good.
Yeah. And so that's, Sean helps me with that. And then like once I get into a good routine, I'm usually okay. And a lot of the things we do is we'll like front load our meals. So like my meals for the morning and lunch-ish are going to have a lot more carbs, protein, and just be a lot more varied, where at night it'll more be veggie based and protein based, depending on the day. If I have a bigger day though, then we'll add in some carbs for dinner as well. But if it's a light day, so like Mondays and Fridays are normally my light day, so that might be just like a salad. But when I say it's just a salad, it's like a salad in a mixing bowl, so it's like a proper salad.
It's from Anna. Do you nap during the day? If so, how often and how long?
I do try and nap during the day. That's also another indication to me of how tired I am, because usually my naps will just be like 30 minutes to an hour, and it'll like, I'll feel like I want to lay down, or like I feel like I should. If I'm really tired, then I'll have like 10 minutes to nap, and I'll take that 10 minutes and I'll take a nap and like just take any chance I have. So that's also a sign of like what my fatigue level is. I really like naps. It really depends on like, I find I'm better with my nap routine when I'm on camp. Like I just get into a better rhythm with it than when I'm home or when I have more going on. Like I feel like I bypass it more. So it's actually one of those things right now that I'm like, I need to get back into my routine where I take like a nap a day, because I think it really helps. And like going to bed on time, like shutting down my computer and my phone at 9 p.m., going to bed at 10 p.m., like having those routines really helps me to recover.
This is from Rick. What methods do you use most? BPM, power, HRV? What do you make use of?
I use a combination of everything. So I would say I use my heart rate for like more of a after the training. I look at it because it interests me, and I like to see like, oh, that was like pretty strenuous, but I don't necessarily base my hard things off of heart rate. If anything, I base my recovery sessions off of heart rate to make sure that I'm going easy enough and not going too hard. So like I when we first started triathlon, one of the things was like, okay, on my easy runs, I shouldn't have my heart rate, I think it was above 132. And so like that we would use heart rate as the indicator of like, okay, it's time to slow down. And if that means walking, like that's fine, but your heart rate can't hit that cap. I use power on the bike, but all in a flexible way. So like especially when Joel's not here, my coach isn't here. Like the other day I did a hill workout and he didn't give me he just told me like 10 by 2 minutes hard, and then 4 by 3 minutes up the hill solid. And I'm like, okay. And so I did it, and I use the power to gauge like my starting point. So like I got a certain amount of watts for the 2 minutes, and then I was like, and I held that for the whole time, and that showed me that I did it right, because I was like, well, I can't go harder, but I can maintain this. And with the hills, like I use it as like whatever I do for the first one, I'm just competitive with myself. So I'm like, well, I can go a little bit further for the next one and a little bit further for the next one. And so I'll use it. I use metrics, but in a combination with like the real life sensations and the day-to-day sensations, because sometimes I feel like it can be limiting, and other times I can feel like it'll be too hard. I do a lot of workouts with Tommy, who is amazing at feeding off of like me and my breathing. And I've had some of my best workouts just by kind of like following his lead and not necessarily looking at my watch or looking at pace, but like going with him. And he can tell because like I'm either on his shoulder or like the days I feel really good, I'm next to him. And the days I feel really bad, he's like looking back and he's like, oh, like there she goes, the wrong direction. But it's like really, it's been really cool to see us kind of grow and him be able to like get me so well during these workouts that I'm lucky because I can, like, that's a part of me that I don't have to expend a lot of energy. I just like follow his lead. so right now it's a really good test for me because he's gone and I have 2 weeks of like workouts by myself, and I'm like, all right, Katie, let's see, you're like solo time. And it's good for me to do the combination of having him to like help get me to the next level, but also being able to do it by myself.
So actually, funny, talking about Tommy, this next question, Valerie wants to know, knowing that your husband, Tommy, is also a triathlete, how do you recommend couples that race together manage their competitive spirit with each other?
Yeah, it's hard. Tommy and I had a real like learning curve for trying to figure out how to train together. Although I would say he's not competitive. I'm competitive with him more. But the biggest thing I think is having it as a partnership more than a competition between the two of you, and like figuring out how to make it work for both of you. So like when we do a track workout, I'll be on the inside lane. And in order for Tommy to get what he needs to out of himself and have it harder for him, he'll go to more like an outer lane and be like further on the outside so that he has to run faster than I do on the inside lane. Another thing with the bike is like, I'm on his wheel for most of our workouts, or like, sometimes I'll be like, well, it's too easy, like go harder. And so like by him being in the front, he's like exerting himself more. And I think that can work vice versa, depending on whether the male or female, or depending on who in the partnership is the stronger person. And just like really communicating the intentions, communicating like, okay, like maybe it'll be fun to just be competitive and playful, but it's only fun if you're both on the same, like same page with that. And like, sometimes it'll be even like stressful if you're like, you haven't talked about it. And it's like, oh, you're one-stepping me. And I'm like, I'm not one-stepping, like, so I think just having the communication factor, figuring out ways that you both can be getting the most out of yourselves, and having time to yourself. Like I have Katie days. I have days where Tommy is not allowed to run with me or not allowed to ride with me. And I just need time to myself because we're with each other 24/7. And like, I get tired and grumpy, and I just need like that moment to myself to just like reset and then go back and like really work with him. And I think it's cool because he's such a crucial part to this journey for me and to making me better. And it was only when I realized how great of a tool he was and how like I trusted him, I trusted his skills, and just that he'll make me better. Because when we first started, he'd try to give me tips. And I'd be like, oh, you're not Joel, you're not my coach. Like, and I wasn't open to it. And now like I'm much more open to it, but I still have days where like he's wanting to give me advice and I'm just not ready. So we now have different language for things. One of the things he'll say is like, can I give you advice, rather than just like project his advice to me. And I'm like, I either say, okay, I say not right now. And a lot of the time when I say not right now, I'll be like 5 minutes later, I'm like, okay, like, were you going to say this? Or like, okay, I'm ready. Like, and it just makes it better. Or like, he would get annoyed because I'd say, we'd be getting ready for a workout, and I say like, how should we do this? And he'd tell me how he would do it. And I would be like, like, we'll do it we'll do it a different way. And he would take that really offensively. So we figured out, if I say like, what would you do if I wasn't here? In his brain, that's different. And so if I say, what would you do if I wasn't here? And he responds, and then I still say like, okay, but I'd rather do this. That's not as offensive to him. And I don't know, to me, it doesn't make sense, but to him, it makes it so much better. And so like, I think knowing how to communicate in a way that your partner is going to just stay calm and like respect and avoid kind of the heightened tension.
Yeah. So this is from Roz. Given the pandemic, how are you changing your training and your traveling to keep yourself safe?
Yeah, so my training is mostly just me and Tommy anyway, so that hasn't really changed much. We do swim with a master's program. They've limited their numbers, and me and Tommy swim in a lane to ourselves, or we each get our own lane, which is really nice. We also were fortunate enough to get vaccinated, both of us. There were extra vaccines out of Walgreens, and we made it in for that. So that was very exciting and really calming. We never thought we'd be able to get a vaccine. So, or like, it's kind of even something I'm a little self-conscious about, because I don't think we're the demographic that needs it the most, but also they would have not gone to anybody. So I'm happy to get one.
Right.
But also, so we're traveling to Spain, and I'm confident in traveling. It's a little different now, but I'll go through the normal protocol of like wearing the mask and just making sure to keep sanitizing and everything like that, and protect other people as much as myself. And then once we're in Spain, it'll be with our group.
Right. So what are your tips for beginners? This is from more M4. What are your tips for beginners who are fine mentally with open water swimming, but really struggle with sighting, just disrupting their stroke rhythm and slowing their swim?
Yeah, I think great for being like good with the mental part of open water swimming, because I think that's really, really hard. With sighting, I think that's something you can practice no matter where you are. You don't necessarily have to be in open water. You can practice sighting. Sometimes I do it just playing around and like swimming in the pool when I'm like, well, what time is it? Like, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll try and like sight while I'm swimming to see the clock, or practice it every now and again. What I like to do, which for me, it works well, is like when I sight, I kind of do like, I don't actually breathe sighting. I bring my eyes up and then I breathe to the side. And so like trying to find the rhythm that works for you is helpful. And I would say oversighting in practice, so that it becomes more natural and rhythmic for in a race. And when it's racing, being able to do the course previews and things like that would be really, or even get in the body of water, because sometimes what I find it helps with sighting that presents itself is like the different waves, or kind of like the ups and downs within the water, is that it provides like certain spaces that are better for sighting. And I'm like, woo, like when you're at the top and you sight and you can see everything. So, and just knowing if you miss sighting, like if you sight and you don't see anything, it's like okay to sight again and use the landscapes of things around you. So rather than try and aim for the buoys, which are sometimes really hard to see, okay, well, what's behind the buoy? Like, is it a like big building? Is it a tree? Like something that's not moving, obviously. Like you don't want to choose like something that's but like use the skyline and use that as like a reference point.
So this is from Barbara Day. You've talked about freaking out when you're in a stress situation. What strategies do you use to manage those actions?
So I think I've gotten better with it as I've been talking to my sports psychologist, and I was always someone who would stay a lot in my head. So like different thoughts and anxieties would kind of revolve and I'd get stuck. And rather than get stuck now, I will either talk to a sports psychologist, talk to my coach. I'll kind of verbalize more. I'm also a writer, and so I like writing stuff down. I like to visualize. So when it's leading into some races, if I'm feeling overly anxious, normally I have a harder time controlling like my brain and my visualizations. So rather than doing that, I'll actually write out my races and have it all written out the same way I would visualize, but like on paper, because to me it's more concrete and it gets me out of my brain. And then when I read it, it just like seems more, I guess, definite in a way. Also, like you can ask Joel, because sometimes if he senses I'm more nervous, he'll be like, go back to your process, like write it out. And so I'll send him like my goals for the race. And I've found that by doing that, I'm able to transition my thoughts from like the what ifs to like, this is what I'm going to do. These are my goals. This is like, and it makes it less scary too, because it's like going from like, wow, this is a big race. Like, what am I going to do? To like, I'm going to get out fast to the first buoy. I'm going to have awareness. And it makes me feel more, take more ownership for it and be in control of things. And I think that's been super helpful, and just not resisting them. Like, I think one of the best things my sports psychologist tells me is, well, I think that's normal. And I'm like, oh, it's normal? Like, okay. Like, so it's feeling like I don't need to resist like these thoughts, but rather like, oh, I'm nervous for this race. Like, that means I care. Like, I'm like, well, like this hill, these downhills are really scary, and I just crashed a couple weeks ago. Like, well, you have a right to, like, that makes sense that you're a little bit more concerned about that, but like you're strong enough to connect on the straights, or your like strength is the uphill. And I remember there's an exercise from Michael Gervais, who's a sports psychologist that I really enjoy, and one of his things is like, you write down like what concerns you, and then you write down like the things that make that you were at your best self, and why you're able to say those things about yourself. And by like changing your brain from like what was nervous to like what makes you the best person you are and the best version of yourself, you go from like a place where you feel weak to like a lot more powerful and a lot more confident.
This is from Valerie. Can you share a time when you felt like giving up during a race but didn't? What did you say to yourself to keep yourself going?
Yeah, I've had a lot of races where it's been a lot harder, and I feel like the worse I'm doing in a race, the harder it is to keep going. And so a few stick out, one of them being the race in Chicago, where I was just like, it was the grand final, and I really wasn't having a great race. And I remember just thinking like, I am strong, like just repeating my mantras over and over again. And that's a time where I can't say that like my mantra like necessarily impacted like where my finish was, or that I like did anything like amazing in the end, but it was one where I finished and I was proud of myself for finishing. And then another one though was when I was racing in Stockholm, and I can't remember if I was going for the podium or going to win, but there was a girl, Andrea Hewitt, ahead of me, and she seemed pretty far ahead of me. And I used the same mantra, like, I'm strong, I'm strong. And all of a sudden I just started like seeing her come back to me. And I'm like, it's working. Like, I was like, and it was cool to like see, like feel empowered by like what I'm telling myself in my head. So I use a lot of mantras. I also think like there's certain times I've like crashed or made a mistake in a race, and sometimes those are like easier ones for me to deal with, because like there's no doubt in my mind of what the next goal is. Like, it's to catch up, it's to like move forward, it's to pick off as many people as I can. Rather, when you're just struggling and feel bad, like it's harder to like get your mind to switch to like, all right, it's time to engage. Another thing that helps me though is segmenting the races. So rather than being like, wow, I have a 10K left to run, or for people who do like half Ironman and Ironmans, like whatever that length of distance is for you guys that you guys have left to run. But for me, it's like figuring out like, okay, get to the next point, like, and then the next point after that. And now I segment even before I start the race. And I found that really helps me to, when I get to the race, it makes it go by a lot faster and I stay engaged, and there's less points of like zoning out in a bad way.
So since this is from Kay, since UCAN is your nutrition now, exactly how do you take it in, how much fluid, etc.?
Yeah, so I haven't used it in a race yet, because we haven't raced yet. But for training, I do one water bottle that'll have 1 scoop of the super starch and one of the watermelon hydration packs, and the super starch is the non-flavored one. And then I'll use one just regular water bottle. So that'll be for like a 3-hour ride, 3 to 3.5 hour ride. And then I'll take one of the bars just in my back pocket, one of their energy bars. So I'm more like preemptive with UCAN. So I'll have it like within an hour, like at basically an hour of my ride, I'll take my UCAN that has the super starch in it, and I'll drink that. Well, start to drink it, not all at the same time, but I'll start drinking that. And then with the bar, it'll be like late workout. I'll take the other one and more to like get home and feel like I still have energy.
So Katie, one of the coolest things that's going to happen at this Olympics is going to be the introduction of the mixed relay, which I think a lot of people might not have seen it yet. Talk a little bit about the mixed relay and how much you enjoy the mixed relay.
Oh, I love the mixed relay. It was like the first time I watched the mixed relay in Hamburg. I'm not like an emotional person when it comes to like watching sports normally. And it was the first time I felt like full of emotion is watching the mixed team relay, because it was so cool. And I felt so proud of watching like USA. We were like vying for the podium at that point. And I think it's just a really neat event because it changes so much throughout the race. Like you never know what's going to happen. And it's just cool to be doing it all together. I love that it's mixed gender. I love the third position. Like that's my favorite, because it's just like you're going all out. There's no doubt in your mind what you need to do. So yeah, I think it's the most dynamic and it's the most emotion filled and exciting race.
Another question from Rosalind: when you travel to different countries to race, are you able to travel or enjoy the country post race? And also, how do you adapt to differences in time zones, cuisine, language, and how much do you rely on U.S. team staff when you travel?
Yeah, so that's actually probably one of the things that was also a learning experience from Rio, was because I was so focused on the race in Rio, like leading up to race day, and like didn't take in the Olympic vibe at all, because I was like afraid it might mess with my race or might distract me. And then I raced, I was disappointed. And then the Olympics were over because we were the second to last day. Yeah. And so we had the closing ceremonies, which was really cool. But I was like, oh, like, I just missed it. Like I didn't take it in. And so my like promise to myself was that for now on, like racing was going to be something that like, not only did I take seriously and work really hard at, but I also took in the experiences and the opportunities that I was getting to travel and have my family, because that was another part that I probably like messed up, I guess, in a way, like beforehand, was like, it would make me nervous having my family there. And I'd be like, no, I don't want you, like, I don't want to see you before the race. Like, we'll see you after the race. But what I found is that it makes it so much more special bringing my family into it. And like, there's like a balance, like we don't go and do activities before the races, but like I'll see them. And then like after the races, we have a plan to like hang out. And so like all of my races, even before the race, like I now like to use my training as ways to see the different places that we are. So like when we're in Bermuda, I'm messaging Flora, like, where's the best place to open water swim? Like, what is the best place to run? And like talking to the other athletes or talking to the people who are from whatever country we're in, so that like before the race, I can maybe involve it with my training. And then after the race, like we'll try to go to see like something. And maybe it's not like the tourist attraction that everybody goes to see, but like to experience the place and actually like have fun. And it's cool because World Triathlon has actually given us a lot. Like I've gotten a lot of experiences through them. So like in Gold Coast, we were able to take a helicopter ride above Gold Coast, and it was really amazing. And in Auckland, like this was a few years back now, they don't have the race, but we went up to like the Sky Tower and had dinner there. So it's been really fun to be able to like, actually experience and enjoy. And like we were in Japan a few times before one of the races, and the Japanese Federation like organized the traditional Japanese meal for us, and so we joined them for a meal, like sitting down and having like sushi and things that are really out of my like comfort zone for food, but it was just such a cool experience. And yeah, so I've been really lucky with that, with the adapting to differences in time zones. Wherever I'm going, I'm on their time zone and I'm not looking back. Like when we go to Spain, it's Spain time. And if I need to take a nap, this will be the time where I limit my naps, and I'll take like a 20-minute nap and just try to get on the schedule, because it's really hard to like look back and be like, oh, it's like, I don't know what time it is, but like, it's like whatever time at home, it kind of like messes with you. So whenever people try to tell me, I'm like, no, don't tell me. I don't want to know what time it is wherever I came from. And then with cuisine, more experimental, either a week or so before the race or after the race. Less experimental during the week of the race. Normally, Tommy and I do like food delivery leading into the race, because I just like to like be in our hotel and just chill. Like I guess I'm kind of introverted in that way, where I just want to like rest and be in like a comfortable space. And we'll order, once we find out that we like somewhere for food, we'll order that same exact thing, the same exact meal for the whole like rest of the week. And it's like a lot of like, no matter where we are, it's really a lot of like rice based, and interestingly enough, it's also curry based. I really like like non-spicy Indian food, which would maybe seem like a little risky for some people, but I haven't had any issues. And language wise, we're actually taking Spanish lessons right now. We take Spanish lessons twice a week. Going to Spain. I took Spanish in high school, so I have a little bit of a base, but I'm enjoying learning more. And we've been to Spain so many times that I'm just waiting for the time that our Spanish teammates are talking and I just like interject, and they don't even know that I know as much Spanish as I do. That's what I'm working towards. That's the goal. And then like for other countries, I try to learn enough to be like respectful and like can say like at least please, thank you, hello, goodbye, and like learn little bits, but I'm definitely not fluent in anything yet.
Katie, what did it mean to you in 2019, you crashed in a test race, lots of stitches in your mouth and you were a mess, and to come back from that and still win the World Championships, not much longer after that? What type of confidence did that give you?
Well, it was the most meaningful, I guess, comeback that I've had, in the sense where when I was in the ambulance leaving the Tokyo course, I was just thinking, wow, not only did I screw myself over like for qualifying for Tokyo, I wanted to qualify in 2019. But also like, did I just ruin my chances of being world champion, which is one of the biggest goals I've ever had. And one of the like world champions that I just think is so cool, have respected like the consistency it takes to be that. And I was like, I'd set myself up like the whole year, and I was thinking, wow, did I just like mess this up? And I think a lot of it was Joel staying really calm and focused on like not putting any pressure on me to like, well, you have to get this place in order to maintain like become world champion. So I was calm, and I was just like so grateful to be able to get to the start line, so grateful to get through the swim, so grateful to get through the bike. And then like once I was on the run, I was like, well, thank goodness, we have made it. And I remember at one point thinking on the run, like, and I was like, is this good enough being on the podium? And I was like, no, you don't want to just be on the podium. You want to win it. Like, and like finding that, because it was like, Jess was like really having an amazing race and like really pushing. And so like finding that extra gear, and like just Tommy's at the finish, my parents are at the finish, like, and I achieved something that like like I knew I think I'm capable of, but like that doesn't always mean you achieve it. Like to be able to actually execute and come back after Tokyo, because you always like, well, maybe not everybody, but I question, like after crashing and things like that, I'm like, well, am I going to race as the same athlete that I know I am, like a couple weeks after this crash? Like, am I going to bounce back as fast? And I was really happy to find out pretty quickly after that race that I was the same athlete and be able to go into like 2020 with that. Well, now 2021.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking so much time. Enjoy your time in Girona. You're going to have a blast, and we can't wait to see you, hopefully, at the starting line of your second Olympics.
Thanks. I hope so too. I'm excited.
All right. Katie Zaferes has been our guest. Up next at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, is another exclusive live session with our VIP registrants, and that's with registered sports nutritionist Sean Sponbauer, who Katie works with. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you in about 15 minutes. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.